Hey guys, Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time we had The Visitation. What was that one about?
Well, they landed supposedly taking Tegan back to Heathrow. They landed in the right spot, but about 300 years too early.
Yeah.
And ended up in the countryside, and there was a highwayman who was trying to help them escape from the locals, who apparently were under the control of some alien. Apparently a comet had been seen. It wasn't really a comet or a meteorite. It was a landing of a spaceship. And what were they called? The pteroleptals or something like that. Anyway, one more, alien species trying to take over the Earth, going to unleash a plague with the rats. I'm guessing it was the bubonic plague. Ultimately, they do make it back to London, and they destroy the pteroleptals' hiding spot, which turns out to be a bakery. And the last shot, as they're pulling away from the fire and the TARDIS disappears, it says Pudding Lane, which is where the Great Fire of London started in, I think, 1666, something like that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's where we are basically, and we also had a character loss on the show. The sonic screwdriver was completely destroyed, so I've decided to give the sonic screwdriver a memorial over here. Gave it a hastily made tombstone and everything, so it's the best I could.
I was wondering what the heck that was.
Yeah, so today we're moving on to Black Orchid, which sounds like an old Magic the Gathering card. If it was a black lotus, I think. I don't play Magic the Gathering. Let me put that out there. So I'm trying to make a joke, but it doesn't work because I don't play the friggin' game. So.
And I thought it was perhaps related to a big Hollywood murder, but I think that was the Black Dahlia.
Right. So we're both wrong on our black flowers. So, yeah. This is a two-parter.
We haven't had one of these in a long time.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I feel like we had another one aside from the one with the first Doctor. That was a third story that we ever had. But I feel like there was another one. I just can't think of it.
Wasn't that where they picked up one of the companions? It was like I can't remember. Vicky or maybe no.
Yeah, no, you're right. It was the Rescue. I think that was right after the Romans. So I think that was it, or maybe it was the Rescue then the Romans. But yeah, that was the other two-parter. So I mean, both instances. That's with the first Doctor, we're on to the fifth Doctor, and they're just doing. There's just two parts, and then next episode is going to be Earthshock. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of a shorter video here, and hopefully everything is okay with the video quality. You haven't seen because I haven't posted the video yet at time of recording this, but last episode it looked like we were recording on the sun because the brightness and contrast was way too high on the recording. So I had to go in and try to fix it and do color correction, and I still have to do color correction here. This whole switching to a webcam thing is not a one-for-one on how I used to record these videos, but hopefully it looks all right. So yeah, hopefully it's good. We're also not being shot in glorious 2K footage like last week, but that's probably fine because, I mean, we're just watching Doctor Who. We don't need 2K resolution. 1080p is fine. Even then, maybe 720 is okay, Anywho, so yeah.
Seems like we've gone through this first season of the fifth Doctor very quickly, if Earthshock is next.
Yeah, I mean, it's 6 stories. It's 6 stories, which we've had for a while now. I guess last season was the first season to not have... Or no, last season was 7 stories, wasn't it? Yeah. Because they didn't include a 6-parter at the end. It was just a 4-parter, so they had 7 stories. This one is 6, but you're right that it went by so fast. I think, honestly, that could be because we had Kinda in the middle, and that's nothing about the quality, but just because we had that in the middle, it's like, because we had at the beginning, it's like, all right, we have the first episode and the second episode, we know we're counting down the days till the travesty of man that is Kinda. And then now it's like, well, after Kinda, you have the Visitation, now this, and it's like, well, I think it is just because we had those 2 rewatches. Like, we already knew 2 of the episodes going into it, so... But yeah, you're right, this is pretty quickly to go through this, so...
But I did enjoy the Visitation. You know, it was a partial historical.
Right. I think this might just be pure historical. Like, I don't think there's any aliens in this one whatsoever.
Yeah, you've been telling me for some time now that this is like the last pure historical.
Yeah, for some reason, I don't know why. And the fact that this is only 2 episodes long makes me feel like they just needed a rush, like, we're missing, 2 episodes. We gotta do something. And so they sort of threw this in there. So, I don't know. But yeah. You got anything else?
I got nothing.
Then we might as well just jump right into Black Orchid. Here we go. Well, for TVPG. Oh, okay, she's dying. That's alright.
The butler did it. Actually, the butler looks like he's the one who was done too. That's supposed to be Nissa.
It certainly looks like Nissa.
Unrelated shots there.
We do have subs on. Alright.
Cadbury's. My favorite.
I always hear the most divisive opinion on Cadbury.
Yeah. I posted that a couple of weeks back, and people all over from Europe and the United States did not agree with me that Cadbury's was the best.
I did say I wanted to stay with the crew for a while. You can stop trying to get me back to Heathrow.
I have.
You certainly know how to fly this crate, don't you?
Oh, Tegan's finally given up on Heathrow.
So what is a railway station?
Well, a place where one embarks and disembarks from compartments on wheels, drawn along these rails by a steam engine. Rarely on time.
What a very
Unless you're in
silly
Japan.
activity.
You think so?
Or Italy.
As a boy, I always wanted to drive one.
I mean, back when you were on Gallifrey?
Did they have trains?
His lordship is a first-class bat, but I'm not quite sure how strong his support is this year.
Come on, you lot.
Still don't understand why Nissa and Adric haven't adopted clothing from the time period like all the others did. Oh yes, a good old game of cricket.
Lovely day.
It is fun to watch. I will tell you this. I think it's more fun to watch than American baseball. Now, of course, that's American baseball now. American baseball back in the 50s and 60s was a lot of fun too.
Well, you better pad up, Doctor. Got your gear?
Ah, I regret I have none.
No matter, I'll fix you up. I'm taking a terrible thrashing, 54 for 8. I made a duck.
Not to mention it.
I told you not to mention the duck.
You know I'm referencing Ed, and Eddie every time I say that, right?
Yeah.
Now, the wicket's very green, the ball's keeping low. Any good with the ball?
Not bad.
Good. Medium pace, slow?
Fast.
Top-ho.
This is another point of, I think they wrote this in a rush, because it's like, what do we do with this guy? It's like, cricket. He's already dressed. This is where we learn that Peter Davison actually sucks at cricket.
Forgive a pardonable curiosity, my dear, but where are you from? The Empire of Traken. Really?
Must be in Wales.
Your doctor substitute has made your score almost respectable, Charles.
Perfectly ripping performance. Much better player than Smutty.
I hope there's just like no point to this episode. It's just now we're just gonna watch him play cricket for a while.
And the
Ripping
crowd goes
performance,
wild.
old boy. Come up to the house and meet the major.
Have they actually shown like in one shot him throwing the ball and it hitting, or do they always cut away?
They have to cut, I'm sure. His arm was going pretty wildly.
Well,
See, I'm not an expert on cricket, but I'm pretty sure it should come almost directly overhand, not off to the side. Now, this guy looks like a Native American except for the lip thing.
May I
That's
present
very
the doctor?
African.
Well, Doctor, how would you like to take a cocktail to your bath?
Well, certainly a cold drink.
What do you do with a cocktail in a bath?
Drink it over.
Could there be Talbots near Isha?
Not possible. The hunt isn't good enough.
Well, Doctor, what can I offer you? Brewster here can make absolutely anything quite superbly.
Well, I do have a terrible thirst. Perhaps a lemonade with lots of ice.
I was about to suggest a
Same as
lemonade.
the doctor, please.
My dear?
A screwdriver, please.
Ah, screwdriver, Brewster. And
Thank you. I'll have the same.
sorry, all the screwdrivers are
I'm
dead.
going to make that orange juice.
Oh, maybe he's South American. They just mentioned the Orinoco.
Well, I'm as fat as myself.
On with that, you'll be in disguise, I guess.
We have one of those old Victrolas. That's Marie Antoinette. Still has her head.
For now. Let's see where the night goes.
I hope Lord Cranley's dancing with the right girl. It's a little naughty, really.
I think it's a great hoot.
Great what?
Hoot.
Hoot. Oh, yes.
There is one way of not getting you mixed up.
What's that?
By having every dance.
Foiled again. You're the host.
Man, the Doctor has to miss out on all the fun.
Why do I always let my curiosity get the better of me?
Well, otherwise we wouldn't have a show.
That's true.
We might have known they were up to something. Now no one can tell them apart.
I can.
How?
That's a secret.
Well, at least Tegan's having fun.
Henry VIII. King Charles, perhaps. Or
Enjoying yourself?
Guy Fawkes. Put the candle back.
Portuguese.
Right. So they speak Portuguese in Brazil. The other brother disappeared in the Orinoco in Brazil. So do we think the older brother is
Still
coming
alive?
back? Yes.
Well. All right.
I mean, it's
mean,
interesting, but yes.
I'm entertained, but
Are you not entertained?
it's something. Okay, I perhaps see where the pure historicals had to maybe leave after the first Doctor's era. They don't fully work, but I mean, again, it's fine. Especially knowing it's a two-parter, this feels like a very filler episode.
Yeah. Now, again, I have no idea if this is based off of some kind of real incident or not. I'm sure it wants to be an Agatha Christie type of mystery, but it's a bit scattered. I mean, we've been literally only given a couple of clues that we have a Native American who could possibly be South American. that the older son, the botanist, disappeared in the Orinoco, but supposedly was the person who found the Black Orchid and the Book of Portuguese. Now, he would be coming back to take the girl away from his younger brother?
Yeah.
Okay. Still not sure where Nyssa fits into all of this, but and the cricket game, I mean, was that just to establish that the Doctor fit into this era because he knew how to play cricket and he was the Doctor?
Yeah.
They're obviously waiting for some other Doctor.
Again, it feels like, especially because it's 2 episodes, this was a rush order writing job, and again, it's not bad at all.
Yeah.
But it was okay. Maybe they ran out of budget or something, but which is strange considering how few episodes there are in this season. But maybe they ran over budget, or they ran out of time, and they just needed something quick, or too many writers dropped out. Because we had that whole thing of why isn't Nyssa and Kinda? Because that was written beforehand, but it was all weird and everything. And I think people had pointed out 4 to Doomsday was the first episode that Davison actually recorded. So yeah, it could have been that there was just a whole big mess. So it's okay, we just need a breather, something before we've got someone working on Earthshock. We just need something in between just to give us a little more time, and they made this, which you're right. It's okay, so what can we do with the characters that we have, And it is sort of the same thing when you go back to the 2-parters that the first Doctor had. It's okay, we need we just had the Dalek, 7-parter. We need a breather. 2 episodes inside the TARDIS. You learn something about the TARDIS. You move on. And so it could be that where it's okay, Jim, Terrence, I guess, whoever wrote this, you write something. It's okay, he wears cricket. He wears a cricket outfit. Okay, have a cricket. If it's cricket, do you put it as just a modern day thing, or you put it as okay, let's put it back to 1925? If you do that, you could have all sorts of richer characters, these sort of fancier, old type, Great Gatsby-esque,
upstairs, downstairs.
Yeah, and you do that, and it's okay, then you make a murder mystery, I guess. But I think the problem with this is that we're already halfway through the episode or the story or whatever. It's it's part 1 of 2. Nothing's really happened yet until this end of the cliffhanger. Yeah. And I get having that be the cliffhanger, but it's okay, so where are we going? We've had some, again, some mysterious elements, but the actual narrative of a murder mystery hasn't started yet.
So it starts with the guy in the white coat, which we assume is a butler of some kind, getting choked.
Yeah.
But then somebody getting tied up on the bed, but then escaping from the bed. And we now assume that's the guy in the Harlequin outfit. But again, it's kind of confusing. I mean, I do see the clues. They're very well planted. And again, you would have to know, and I'm sure the average person, hopefully, in Great Britain at this time would know that Brazil is a non-Spanish speaking country, that they speak Portuguese. Right. So, I mean, it's all there. You just have to dig for it. It's just that no real clue as to where this is going, unless, of course, as we said, either the lost brother came back or he never left in the first place and they've been hiding him away in the secret attic all this time.
Yeah, because there was another... there's actually a 10th Doctor episode that not only is it a sort of Agatha Christie story. They go back and they meet Agatha Christie. Yeah. So I probably rightfully, I got lambasted by the comments on that one, because at the time, I didn't know who Agatha Christie was.
Oh dear.
Yeah, you can expect how that comment section went. However, in my defense, I was brought up with the American educational system, and that is not in there at all.
Yeah.
So don't put that on me. You can put that on America as a whole. So, but anyway.
And in the last 25 years, there have only been 1 or 2 Agatha Christie movies.
Yeah, so yeah, like, and in that episode, they also had a similar kind of thing of like, oh, well, you know, they're, like, it wasn't actually, like, they haven't left this whole time or something like that. So it could be that it's like, you know, they've, like, maybe he did come back, but he was all screwed up, you know, and so they're kind of like, they're kind of keeping him hidden, and they're just being like, oh, well, now Anne will go and marry the other son instead. But he's, he wants to get out and I guess kill Anne. And I guess the question does remain now, even though I'm pretty positive that was Anne in that last scene, is that Anne or is that Nyssa? Which I guess adds the extra layer of, because why else would you have the two of them, especially in the exact same outfit, other than that makes the murder mystery even more interesting. That's almost a Glass Onion kind of thing. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of the point where I think it's not Nyssa. Now that will be the problem once he puts that on.
So?
You think...
Fourths, actually.
You can only be Nyssa.
Just look at that.
Well, I didn't have any breakfast.
This is like the most relatable Adric's been all season.
Just exactly who are you and what are you doing here?
I'm afraid if I told you, you wouldn't believe me.
I am the chief constable of this county, and you, sir, are under suspicion of murder.
I'm a Time Lord.
A what?
I told you.
Try again.
I travel in time and space. I have a time machine. You've read H.G. Wells?
I know of him, of course, yes. He writes fiction.
Lady Cranley, please help me.
How can Lady Cranley help you?
There's something terribly wrong here. Lady Cranley knows I showed her another dead body.
What?
I'm afraid, like Mr. Wells, the doctor has a vivid imagination.
I showed you a body. In a cupboard, up there. You and the Indian.
Indian?
An Indian. With a lip. I give up.
Perhaps you'd show me.
Willingly. This way. A South American native.
Badge?
I'm not imagining all this.
No.
Lady Cranley, I appeal to you. It was you who introduced me to this man.
The man in the cupboard?
No, the Indian.
With the lip?
Yes! His name was Detoni. Or something like that. You said he was a friend from Brazil.
Where the nuts come from.
Where the nuts come from.
No. That's from Charlie's aunt.
Please. After you, Sergeant.
Well, there won't be any room.
You are in for a surprise.
Well, good. That worked out.
Robert, come in. Strike me pink.
What is it, Cummings?
This definitely feels like a fan wrote an episode and was like, okay, just use the TARDIS, it'll work. This was a brilliant idea.
Very hazardous to try to film that sort of thing.
There they are.
Nice special effects.
Thank you, George.
Ugh. Well, the monster always has to die. And there has to be a burning building at the same time.
Do you really mean it? We can keep them.
Of course. There's something I'd like you to have.
Thank you. I shall treasure it.
Let's just hope he never jettisons the library. Alrighty. Well, that's it.
Well, the second episode, certainly more action than the first episode. I realized there's a whole lot of exposition to set up. And it was a good, overall, good story, fun stuff. It's just it took so long to get going there at the beginning.
Yeah. It's honestly like a weirdly paced modern episode because it's about the same length as one. So, yeah, I don't know. It's just I don't know. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And honestly, I wouldn't mind if like maybe, and I know we're kind of running out of seasons now, and they were already made years and years ago, but I wouldn't mind if there was, if every season had a sort of like, all right, here's just a nice sort of smaller, I mean, I say filler, but the problem is the word filler, especially when it comes to anime shows, has such a negative connotation that I try to fix it, but it just never works. But it's just, this honestly was kind of a filler episode, doesn't really matter, short, it's sweet, it's to the point, it's fine, so yeah, and even without any aliens, it still pretty much worked out, so yeah, I don't know how long the discussion is going to be on this one because I didn't write down too much.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the setup, and again, I know there are people who say the setup shouldn't be too obvious, but it also cannot be too complicated, because if you arrive at the end and you go, "How did we get here?" then that's, I mean, Agatha Christie has a way, seriously, because I've done several other things, read some of her books. She has a way of you see the bits and pieces, even though you can't quite sometimes figure out how they all go together. But when you get to the end, you go, okay, now I see where all this, I mean, it's like a puzzle. You put it together and suddenly there's the picture. That's kind of what this did. They gave us a couple of clues, although in a very slow manner. And then in the second episode, really wound it up and put them all together and went, okay, there it is. He was captured by the natives because he stole their sacred flower, and they cut out his tongue and disfigured him, and then he was rescued and brought back to England, where his mother, but Lord Cranley wasn't his father, I guess she remarried.
That's no, because I mean, well, because there was Lady Cranley, and then it was their other son. It was the other son, I think, wasn't it? What was his name?
Because Lord Cranley didn't seem to. Maybe I missed that. Maybe I was confused there. But it seemed to me like she referred to as her son. So it kind of gave me the feeling that perhaps Charles and the other were her sons, and that she had later remarried to Lord Cranley. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah.
But again, still a good slow setup. Unfortunately, too slow. Yeah. But a very good conclusion there.
I mean, it's a thing of like, if this was a modern Doctor Who episode, and it's just one 45, 47-minute episode through and through, the pacing and placement of things could have been different. In the first 15 minutes, you could have set up the mystery and maybe set up one of the murders. You wouldn't have to have well, here's 5 minutes of the Doctor in a bathrobe wandering the corridors of the mansion, but that only is because of how this this whole thing is set up. That it's like, all right, you have to have part 1, 24, 25 minutes, then you have to have some sort of a cliffhanger on that, so you come back for part 2, then you can get everything. But just by doing that, it's like, well, we can't evenly pace out everything. Yeah. Where it's like, all right. Beginning, 15 minutes in, conflict starts, bit of a twist, bit more, you start figuring things out, last 15 minutes, you figure everything out, resolution, ending. So it's just the pacing, just because of the format of the show itself. Yeah. So, but
now, interesting the way that they explained why there was a hidden spot basically in the manor, was that it was a place where I'm assuming the Catholics came during the time after the Restoration. I can't remember exactly. I know there was Queen Elizabeth was a Protestant, but then she was followed by James, who was a Catholic, and Charles, who was a Catholic, and then Charles II and James II. So I know that there was a whole big thing about trying to purge the Catholics out of British society, and so this was where they would come and hide out. So, I mean, that made sense. And again, I suspect that British children would have understood that from their history classes more than we would, because that's something we would really only learn in a college class.
Yeah.
Because when we get to world history, although we do talk quite a bit about British history because it affects American history, we wouldn't have known about Elizabeth and Charles, or James and Charles and James. So.
Just you saying that makes me realize they have such a great variety in their monarch names.
Well, it's traditional. I mean, go back to the originals. You got Ethelbert and Ethelred and some of those other wonderful names. What was his name? Alfred the Great. They've never had another King Alfred. John, of course, was so bad that the story goes that no other English king has ever wanted to go by that name. The current Charles is the first one since Charles II, which was in the late 1600s. Because, and again, I can't remember. I know one of the Jameses or one of the Charles, or maybe two of them, were actually beheaded. That may have been Charles I, which brought about the interregnum, the time of the Cromwells. They had abolished the monarchy and then brought it back, the Restoration. So again, it's been many years since I either took a course or taught a course about that. So my memory is sketchy at best. So please forgive me.
Yeah, somewhere in there's a George or two or three, I guess. So
there were 4 Georges literally in a row. Of course, we tend to know George III because he was the king during the American Revolution.
Yeah,
but George V, if I recall, was he the one that abdicated to marry the American Wallis Simpson? And the queen who just passed away last year, or earlier this year. No, it was last year. She was only Elizabeth II. So, yeah, they tend to follow family names. And Prince George, who is William's first son, I think, would probably go with George. I think it'd be George VI or George VII. William would only be William IV if he chooses that name. A lot of people thought Charles might choose another name because of the unfortunate associations with one of the earlier Charleses. But, I mean, he's been called Charles, his entire life, so it makes sense that he would go with that.
I'd say he's a little old to be changing his name, but then again, doesn't literally every pope do that?
Some of them do. For example, Pope Francis simply took the name Francis because that was his favorite saint, Francis of Assisi, helping out the poor. The Pope before him, Benedict, was German, and I can't remember, his name was Johann or something like that. And then there were like 23 Pope Johns, and then a couple of Pope Pauls, 6 or 7 Pauls. And then when the last Pope Paul died, if I recall correctly, the man who became the Pope decided he wanted to be named after the previous 2 popes, so he called himself John Paul. First time in a long time that there had been a Pope with 2 names. He only lasted a month before he died of a heart attack, and then they elected the second one, who so admired the first one that he called himself John Paul II. And then we had Benedict, and now we have Francis.
Well, yeah, so as much crap as I just gave the British monarchy, they're not that bad. They're all like, we've got like 5 names. They work. They all kind of work. It's not like, it's like, well, I like John. I like Paul. I'm gonna be John Paul. And the next guy comes along. I like that guy a lot, so I'll be John Paul again. So,
and sadly, there'll never be a pope named George Ringo.
Oh yeah. So,
sorry, couldn't resist.
This is a slightly off topic. The last pope, he didn't die, did he, or did he?
No, he retired.
I know he retired, but I didn't remember.
No, he's still alive. Yeah, as far as I remember. But yeah, he was really getting up in age. He was in his 80s, and he was not well enough to continue the job. So he retired. And that's the first time, like in 600 years, that a pope stepped down voluntarily rather than just dying in the office. And they're very worried about Francis right now because his health has not been great either.
So, anywho, none of that matters to Doctor Who, but this episode was so short that we don't really have a ton of things to mention. Again, though, I feel like they were like, okay, what do we do for this episode? You got to write something, probably is very limited budget. So it's like, okay, the Doctor already wears a cricket outfit, so we can do that. I'm sure all they had to do was, go next door and they found all of those party costumes. So, like, I'm sure that was all there. and I'm sure, like playing 6 Degrees from Kevin Bacon, it's 6 Degrees from who has an English manor that we can film in for 2 weeks. So I feel like this was and especially there's almost no special effects other than the fire itself,
which was very good. I mean, that really surprised me.
But that's pretty much the only special effect. There's not even a moment where the Black Orchid spews something in somebody's face, or it's like, oh no, and it's like there's no special effects in any of this. Again, other than it's like, well, you need 2 Nissas, but that's such an easy effect as long as you have a body double.
Yeah.
So,
and was it the Sunmakers where the collector got thrown off the roof?
Yeah.
And that seemed to be an obvious dummy, but that actor or that stuntman actually went over the side of that, because that was a real human being that went over the side of that wall.
Yeah, because that was the thing with the collector was he was like very stern in how he was standing, and they just picked him up and he just didn't move at all. He didn't flail around or anything, and then they just chucked him over and he just kept in that arms crossed position all the way down. So, but yeah, here it's like I imagine it was very like, okay, we got to save some money somewhere, and so that's sort of why this one was written. And again, maybe well, you have to find an English manor that you can rent out and film for 2 weeks. That's easy enough. It's England, and then you just need the car from 1925. So, all of that is probably just a very cost-effective episode. So,
and I may have mentioned this before. The first place we lived in England, just outside of a little town called Herringswell, we lived in the servants' quarter of a hunting lodge, which I think was built in either 1910 or 1911. So, again, not too far off of this particular time period. And I can attest to you, because I went up and looked in the front doors a couple of times. I mean, just the huge, tall ceilings, the huge expanse, the beautiful, ornate carved doors and everything. So, I mean, it was, I'm sure, like you said, they just went out and said, hey, anybody want to rent us your country manor for a week or 2 while we film?
Yeah.
Although I'm sure a lot of that, the exteriors were filmed there, the interiors were probably in the studio. But yeah, still good stuff.
Because I'm sure the interiors, they probably had some, British drama going on that it's like, well, we'll just film there, during the lunch breaks or something, or just film on different sets when they're not being used. And then, the exterior you might have honestly, with the exception of the rooftop scene, you probably could have just filmed in an afternoon. It's like, well, we just have a party. We'll just have an actual caterer there. Everybody's in the correct costumes.
And sadly, like you said, Adric finally loosened up a little bit. He was becoming a normal teenage kid. And next episode, he's gone.
Yeah, poor guy. I only feel so bad. But yeah, honestly, just him just kind of hanging out and just eating all of their food. I was like, you know what? That's not a bad Edric episode. And same for Tegan. It was nice that she also loosened up. She was having some fun. I'm glad that the episode started with she's just given up on going back to Heathrow. She's like, okay, if we get there, we get there. If not, I'm just gonna have to live with it, So that's at least good. That's we've been waiting for that all season for her to just be more normalized in the group. Yeah. So, and then everything else. I mean, even down to Anne just being Nissa. Basically, it's like, okay, that's very cost effective. A, you don't have to pay another actress. But B, it just it works in the story, and there's weirdly so much precedent for characters having doppelgangers in Doctor Who that it just sort of works out, and then again, it also feels like whoever wrote this, Terrence Dudley, it feels like he's been watching for a long time, or he's heard a fan that's just been like, well, if the Doctor just shows them the TARDIS or says he's a Time Lord, then you could get things done. So as he was writing, he was like, okay, how do I get the Doctor out of this situation so we can move the plot along? They find the TARDIS, they show him, then they go back, and it's all fine. They totally believe him. He's a Time Lord. You know, it all works out. Like Sir Robert's actually figured, he accepted him being a Time Lord much faster than in last episode with the Highwayman. So yeah.
But mentioning H.G. Wells, that was pretty good. That was very again, from that time period, they would have all begun to know H.G. Wells from War of the Worlds and the Time Machine and all the other stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got. You got anything else?
I got nothing.
Well, now that we've had a discussion that was 50% British monarch names and Pope names, and the other 50% being Doctor Who, I'd say that was pretty good.
Yeah.
So next, I don't even know why, I don't need to pull it up. I know exactly what's next. Up next, we will be rewatching Earthshock to end out Season 19. You're right, it really has gone fast. Because sometimes I think, man, this season's gone by really quickly, and then I think back to the first episode, I'm like, that felt so long ago. Especially at the end of last season, when I thought back to, the Leisure Hive, I was like, that was so long ago. We had, 8 different, companion exits and stuff, and now it's like, alright, we're already on to Earthshock. I feel like we just had Kinda, the other day, which we kind of did. It was 2 weeks ago now. And so, yeah, it's been a shorter season, but overall, I've enjoyed the season. Yeah. Just with a little hiccup in the middle there, but it happens. So
yeah, I'm enjoying Peter Davison.
Yeah, honestly, and again, it's so funny watching how frustrated the Fifth Doctor is. Even just as he's going through that corridor, and he just says, "Why do I always let my curiosity get the better of me?" He's trying to kind of be normal, but there's that part of him that just drags him back, and he gets frustrated for it. So, and even just when he's trying to prove his innocence, and it's like, and yes, there was a man in the cupboard, and there's an Indian. Oh, I give up. He knows he's not getting anywhere with that conversation. So, it's almost like if the Fourth Doctor was just complete confidence, maybe even to a fault, this is now when you get the opposite Doctor. It's like he has his confidence, but he also realizes there's some things he just can't do anymore. Yeah. So, because honestly, if this was still the Fourth Doctor, not only would he have easily convinced them that all of that had happened, but he would have convinced them that somehow a dog did it too, because he's just that weird. But anywho, but that is basically it. With all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. There's a bunch of links on screen if you want to go click around any of those. There's a playlist for all of our Doctor Who classic reactions, as well as another playlist with all of my modern Doctor Who reactions if you want to go check those out. There's also a subscribe button and a Patreon button on screen, as well as other links in the description if you want to go check out any of those. See you guys later.